This is Atoke from Texas.
This is Matt Black from Honolulu, Hawaii.
Jason Becker from Pennsylvania.
Georgy Berezin, Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Chanitra Bell, deployed overseas.
Today we're going to discuss project scope management, how it fits into project management, its major tools, its importance, its history, and its impact. The review topic for our video is project scope management and some of its relationships to software development. We're going to discuss how it can keep a project under control and manageable while still giving your stakeholders what they want and need. Without scope management, the project's boundaries will inevitably expand out of control. The project will soon become unwieldy and may collapse under its own weight. Scope management is a way to keep your project at its fighting weight. Much of the history of project management involved the buildings of physical structures, like pyramids, bridges, and castles. Structures were hydroelectric dams, space stations, and skyscrapers. While there are many aspects of software that have analogies to these structures, there are also many differences. Project management in software has not yet reached the levels of consistency that its counterparts in construction and engineering enjoy. That is because the profession of software project management deals with technological challenges that have never existed before. The profession is still finding that balance of universal project management principles that apply everywhere versus the new reality that apply only to the world of software programming. What were the most important tools used in creating the great structures of the past? It was not the saw, the hammer, or the pulley, as indispensable as all of these things were. The most important tools for great projects were writing instruments. Without some way of recording what was needed, when it was needed, who needed to do it, and how much they would get paid for doing it, none of the other tools would have been put to much good use. In a fundamental sense, project management involves writing, drawing, or charting what is needed beforehand, during, and afterwards, then communicating those writings throughout the process. Of course, there's much more to it, but that is the foundation. One of the main benefits of writing something down is that you simultaneously define it. In a very real sense, something that is not written down is not really defined. Something that is not defined has no clear boundaries. A project that has no clear boundaries will become overgrown, leak, and spill. Project scope management is the process of defining your project so you keep it to size and stop it from leaking and spilling. This is one principle that is not and will not change regardless of the time or technology involved.
In order to illustrate the idea of project scope management, we will start a fictional company called Altruism Incorporated that wants to create an internal software program with the vague goal of improving its operational efficiency and maximizing its revenue by better integrating its operations and sales teams. Off the bat, we have a problem. The current goal, as stated, is so vague that it is almost meaningless. If asked what that statement meant, everyone in the company would give a different answer. We need a plan to define and clarify the company's goals for the project. In other words, we need a plan to define its scope. The first thing we need to do is plan how we are going to go about defining the scope for this project. Who are we going to question? What questions are we going to ask them? How will we prioritize and weigh the responses we will get to our questions? This is our scope management plan, and we have considerable freedom in how we go about it. For our example, we are going to interview the Director of Operations, the Director of Sales, and the company controller and ask them how they interpret the company's originally stated goal. Our questions will also include when they expect to have the software.
We will then compare their answers and create an initial scope rough draft based on the intersection of their answers. We will then take the draft and review it with our 3 prime interviewees as well as other people in the company to flesh it out even more. Finally, we will create our official scope by refining the results of our second round of interviews. The next phase is the collecting requirements phase. In this phase, we will execute the plan set forth in our scope management plan. Remember, the phase before this one was just a planning. Now it is time to do. Now that we have our rough draft, we have a much clearer idea of what the company needs and when it needs it. We also have a clear idea of what other departments will be affected by the project and who and what will need to complete it. We will have received a lot of feedback on our initial draft regarding what to change, what should and should not be done, and what could be improved upon. We will use this feedback to refine our draft. We will prioritize the most important features that can be implemented within the time constraints. This will be our project scope definition. Now that we have our scope defined, we can begin planning its implementation with the work breakdown structure. This is a chart that separates the project into its major parts and then further separates each major part into objectives. This includes a deadline for when each part is expected to be completed.
Once the implementation is underway, the project manager must keep an eye on it. There will be constant pressure to add features to the project and expand its scope. In some cases, there will be good justification for expanding the scope. In those cases, the project manager must alter the initial project scope document and the work breakdown structure. This will almost always involve updating the deadline for the project's completion. In those instances where the justification for expanding the scope is not warranted, the project manager must decline the request. Project managers who have had early experiences with projects spiraling out of control become much more sensitive to project scope issues and continuously work on improving their abilities to manage and control it. How well you handle project scope management will set the tone for all the remaining parts of both your project and your management efforts. If you do it well, the remaining parts will be that much easier. If you do it poorly, it may not matter how well you do the other parts.